The wind always tells the truth, even when the weatherman lies. It whispers before it shouts, a low-frequency vibration that settles in the rigging long before the whitecaps start to crown. I was sitting on the edge of Dock 4, my canvas boots dangling over the dark, oily water, watching the tide swirl around the barnacle-encrusted pilings. The air smelled of diesel, salt, and incoming rain, a heavy, metallic scent that coated the back of the throat and warned that the barometer was dropping. Most people look at the ocean and see a view, a backdrop for their vacations. I look at it and see a machine, a vast, indifferent engine of kinetic energy that doesn't care if you live or die. It only cares if you know the rules. I adjusted the collar of my weathered jacket, pulling it tighter against the damp chill. I was between passages, adrift in that strange, suffocating limbo where the land feels too solid and the people move too fast. I wasn't looking for work. I was looking for silence. The harbor was noisy with the clanking of halyards and the shouts of tourists. But if you listened past that, you could hear the water breathing against the seawall. "Captain Rogers?" The voice came from behind me. It was sharp, precise, cutting through the ambient noise like a knife through canvas. It wasn't a voice that asked questions. It was a voice that issued subpoenas. I turned around slowly. A woman stood there. She was entirely out of place on the weathered dock, dressed in a tailored white pantsuit that probably cost more than my first boat. She held a leather portfolio against her chest like a shield, her knuckles pale from the grip. She looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix because it lives in the marrow of the bones. She was older than me, maybe late 30s, with eyes that were scanning me for defects, weighing me against some invisible standard. "I'm Micah," I said, not standing up. "Captain is a title for when I'm on a boat. Right now, I'm just a guy sitting on a dock watching the tide turn." "I'm Alexis Rodriguez," she said. She stepped closer, her heels clicking precariously on the uneven wood slats. "I own the North Star." I whistled low, a reflexive appreciation. Everyone in the marina knew the North Star. It was a 60-foot swan, a performance cruiser built for deep water and deep pockets. It was a masterpiece of naval architecture, currently berthed at the end of the quay, a sleek white ghost that hadn't left the harbor in 2 years. She was a thoroughbred locked in a stable. "Beautiful boat," I said, looking toward the end of the pier. Shame to let her rot. "She isn't rotting," Alexis snapped, a flash of defensive fire in her eyes. "She is." Paused. "And I need to move her. Today. The forecast is ugly," I noted, nodding back at the gray horizon where the clouds were stacking up like bruises. "Gale force warnings north of the Cape. You don't move a boat that's been sitting still for 2 years into a gale. Entropy is a patient enemy, Miss Rodriguez. Hoses dry out, seals crack, things break when they wake up." "I don't have a choice," she said. Her voice cracked, just a hairline fracture, but I heard it. "I have to get her to Newport by Friday for the asset valuation. If the boat isn't there, the board votes to liquidate the maritime division. My father's legacy. They think I can't handle the logistics. They think I'm just a checkbook." She looked at the boat, then back at me, her gaze hardening. "My usual captain quit this morning. He said the engine sounded wrong. He didn't want the liability. I need someone who isn't afraid of a noise. I was told you handle difficult passages, that you don't ask unnecessary questions." "I handle reality," I said. I finally stood up, unfolding my frame. I brushed the dust off my jeans. She blinked, surprised by the sudden shift. "You'll take the job? I'll look at the problem," I said. "Then I'll tell you if you're sinking or swimming. There's a difference between bravery and suicide, Miss Rodriguez." We walked down the long pier to the slip. The North Star was magnificent, even in her neglect. Her lines were clean, her mast towering into the gray sky. But she had the sad air of abandonment. The teak decks were silvered with oxidation, the lines were stiff with salt, and the canvas covers were faded. Alexis stepped aboard, her high heels wobbling on the gangway. It was a small thing, a reflex, but it made me respect her instantly. She knew the first rule: protect the deck. She wasn't just an owner, she was a sailor, somewhere under that suit. "The keys are in the chart table," she said, her breathing shallow. "I'll start the generator." "Don't," I ordered gently, holding up a hand. "Let me check the fluids first. If it's been sitting, the impeller might be dry. You start it dry, you shred the rubber, And then we have no cooling? We'll seize the block before we clear the breakwater. She paused, her hand hovering over the companionway hatch. Right. Of course. I knew that. I'm just rushing. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, I said. Go below. Open the seacocks. Check the battery voltage. I followed her down. The interior was luxurious cherry wood, cream leather upholstery, polished brass fixtures, but it smelled stale. The air heavy with trapped humidity and lack of use. I lifted the companionway stairs, engaging the hydraulic struts to expose the massive Yanmar diesel heart of the vessel. I pulled the dipstick. The oil was black, thick like tar, but the level was fine. I checked the belts. Loose, dry-rotted slightly, but holding tension. I checked the bilge. Dry. Then, I shone my flashlight into the pan under the transmission. A small, shiny puddle of red fluid shimmered in the beam. Miss Rodriguez, I called out. She came out of the navigation station, looking anxious. What is it? Transmission fluid leak, I said, pointing the light. Rear output seal. It's small right now, but under load, with the propeller fighting a head sea and 40 knots of wind, that seal could blow. If you lose propulsion in a gale, you're just a very expensive cork. Can you fix it? She asked. It was the question they always asked. Can you fix the neglect? Can you fix the time? I can jury-rig a seal wrap, I said, reaching for the heavy tool bag I never traveled without. Self-fusing silicone tape and hose clamps. It creates a pressure bandage. But it's temporary. It's a triage, not a surgery. We'll have to sail. We can't rely on the iron wind to push us the whole way. I can sail, she said. Her chin went up, a defiant gesture against the doubt she thought I held. I grew up on this boat. I know how to handle the winches. I looked at her. I saw the defiance, but I also saw the fear behind it. She was fighting a corporate war on land, and she was hoping the ocean would be simpler. She was wrong. The ocean is harder, but it's honest. Okay, I said. I'll wrap the seal. You check the safety gear. Flares, life raft, EPIRB. If any of it is expired, we don't leave the dock. No exceptions. She nodded, relieved to have a concrete task. I'll check the lazarette. I spent the next hour in the engine bay. It was hot, cramped, and smelled of grease and old diesel. My hands moved with practiced rhythm, cleaning the housing with solvent, stretching the silicone tape until it fused into a solid rubber mass, tightening the stainless steel clamps until they bit into the casing. It wasn't pretty, but it was tight. I checked the fluid levels again, topped it up. When I climbed out, wiping my hands on a rag, Alexis was standing in the cockpit, staring at her phone. Her posture was rigid. Bad news? I asked. My uncle, she said, her voice tight with suppressed rage. He says I'm being reckless. He says, I'm not capable of managing the asset. He's already drafting the motion to sell the company if I miss the meeting. The asset is a boat, I said. It needs to be sailed, not managed. Is the safety gear good? Yes. Everything is in date. The raft was recertified last month. She hesitated. Micah, I have to be honest. I didn't run the full pre-departure checklist. I fired the last captain an hour ago because he refused to leave. I just checked fuel and water. I was desperate. I nodded. Honesty was good. Desperation causes mistakes. But we caught the transmission. We'll check the rest underway. Cast off the bow line. She looked at me, surprised. Just like that? Into a storm warning? The tide is turning, I said, looking at the water swirling past the hull. We leave on the ebb, or we fight the current for 6 hours. If we fight the current, we burn fuel we might need later. Logic dictates we leave now. Unless you want to call your uncle and tell him he wins? She put the phone away. She stepped to the bow. She moved well, barefoot and balanced. She cast off the line, coiling it neatly. I took the helm. I engaged the transmission. The boat shuddered. A low vibration running through the deck plates, then moved forward. It's just us, she said, watching the dock recede, her face pale but set, on the open water. It's never just us, I corrected softly, feeling the wheel come alive in my hands. It's us, the boat, and the weather. And the weather always has the casting vote. We just hope it votes abstain. The first 6 hours were deceptively calm. We motored out of the harbor and raised the mainsail. The canvas snapped and filled, a giant white lung inhaling the wind. I killed the engine to save the transmission seal, letting silence fall over the boat, replaced by the rush of water against the hull. Alexis stood at the wheel. She looked different now. The white blazer was gone, replaced by a waterproof windbreaker and jeans. Her hair was pulled back, whipping around her face. "Course is 040, I said, checking the compass. "I know," she said. "I charted it." "You charted it?" I raised an eyebrow. "Usually, owners hired captains to do the thinking." "I have my captain's license," she said, glancing at me. "Expired, but I have it. I didn't just inherit the money, Micah. I inherited the love for this. My father taught me to navigate by the stars before he taught me to read a balance sheet." "Fair enough," I said. "Then you know that chart plotter is lagging. Look at the GPS speed versus the knot meter. There's a discrepancy of 0.7 knots. She frowned, looking at the screens. "You're right. Current? Fouled bottom." I diagnosed. "Barnacles on the hull. Drag. We're fighting friction. It means our ETA is pushed back by 4 hours. We won't clear the Cape before the front hits. We'll hit the storm center at night." She paled slightly. "At night? In the dark?" "Darkness is just a lack of photons," I said, sitting on the bench and watching the horizon. "The waves feel the same. The wind blows the same. We just have to trust the instruments and our balance. You can't see the wave that hits you anyway, so seeing it coming just adds anxiety." "You're very calm," she said. "About everything." "Panic is expensive," I said. "It costs energy you need for solutions. I try to be frugal with my energy." "I wish I could think like that," she admitted. She engaged the autopilot and sat opposite me. "My life is loud. The board, the lawyers, the press, everyone wants a piece. Everyone has an opinion on how I should fail. On land, noise is currency," I said. "People shout to be heard. Out here, noise is usually a warning. If the rigging sings a certain note, the tension is too high. If the hull groans, the stress is structural. You learn to listen to the things that matter and ignore the things that don't. Your uncle? He's just noise." She looked at me, her eyes searching. "And what matters right now?" "The barometer," I said, tapping the glass of the analog instrument mounted on the bulkhead. "It dropped 4 millibars in an hour. The low-pressure system is accelerating. It's going to be nasty. Should we turn back?" "Turning back costs more than pushing through," I said. "If we turn back, we're fighting the wind and the tide. We'd have to beat upwind into a gale. That breaks boats. If we go forward, we run with it. It's faster, but it's wilder. We have to commit. How do we prepare?" "We reef the mainsail now," I said, "while it's calm. We secure everything below decks. And we cook a hot meal. You can't fight a storm on an empty stomach. Your body needs fuel to generate heat." "I'll cook," she said, standing up. "I make a decent pasta puttanesca. It's pantry-friendly. Anchovies, capers, canned tomatoes. Carbohydrates are good," I agreed. "Go. I'll handle the rig." She went below. I watched her go. She wasn't just a rich girl playing sailor. She had grit. She was scared, but she was moving forward. I walked to the mast. I cranked the winch, lowering the massive sail to its second reef point. The canvas bunched up, reducing our power but increasing our stability. It was a trade-off. Life is always a trade-off. When I finished, I looked down the companionway. The smell of garlic and tomatoes drifted up, mixing with the salt air. It was domestic, cozy, completely at odds with the gray wall of clouds building in the north. For a moment, I felt a pang of something I hadn't felt in years. A desire to be part of something, rather than just passing through it. I pushed it down. Attachments were like barnacles. They created drag. We ate in the cockpit as the sun went down. The sky turned a bruised purple. The wind picked up, whistling in the wires a low, mournful note. "This is..." Alexis paused, her fork hovering. "Nice." Despite the impending doom, "It's the contrast," I said. "Comfort feels better when the chaos is outside the glass." Her phone buzzed. She had satellite internet on board. She looked at the screen, and her face hardened into a mask of stone. "They're calling an emergency vote," she said, her voice cold. "Tomorrow morning." They're going to try to remove me as CEO in absentia because I'm unreachable during a crisis. My uncle is claiming I've absconded with company property. Are you? I'm right here, she said, typing furiously. I'm fighting to get the asset to the valuation. I have to stop them. Put the phone away, Alexis, I said gently. I can't. I have to email legal. You can't stop them from here, I said. And if you're looking at that screen, you're not looking at the horizon. You're going to get seasick. And if you get sick, you get dehydrated. And if you get dehydrated, you make bad decisions. She looked up, angry. You don't understand. This is my legacy, and this boat is your life support system, I said. If we hit a submerged container in the dark because you were emailing your lawyer, the legacy ends at the bottom of the Atlantic. The boat demands your attention. The board can wait. She stared at me. Then, slowly, she put the phone down on the teak table. You're right, she whispered. I hate that you're right. It's physics, I said. Focus on the immediate vector. Suddenly, the boat lurched. It wasn't a wave. It was a mechanical shudder, followed by a sickening clunk-grind noise from the steering pedestal. The wheel spun freely in Alexis's hand, offering zero resistance. I lost steering, she yelled, spinning the wheel. It's loose! The boat slewed sideways, broadside to the building waves. The sails snapped violently, the boom swinging with lethal force. Autopilot, I shouted. Engaging, she pressed the button. Error. Drive unit not responding. Micah, we're drifting. We were broadside. The waves were picking us up and rolling us. I jumped to the emergency tiller hatch in the floor of the cockpit. I ripped it open. I jammed the metal emergency tiller into the rudder stock. Hold this, I commanded. It's going to be heavy. You have to physically fight the water against the rudder. Do not let go, or it will break your arm. She grabbed the metal bar. She grunted as the water pressure hit the rudder. I got it. I grabbed my tool bag and dove below decks. I scrambled back to the lazarette, the steering quadrant room in the stern. It was a tiny, cramped space, filled with hydraulic pumps and cables. I shone my flashlight. The steering cables were hanging loose. They hadn't snapped. The turnbuckles, the metal screws that tensioned the cables had been unscrewed. My blood ran cold. Turnbuckles don't unscrew themselves. They have locking nuts and safety wire. I looked closer. The safety wire had been cut. The locking nuts were backed off. This wasn't an accident. This was sabotage. I grabbed my wrench set. I worked fast, my body wedged between the hull and the water tank. The boat was rolling hard, slamming me against the fiberglass. I felt the nausea rising, but I swallowed it. Micah! Alexis screamed from above. I can't hold it. The waves are getting bigger. 2 minutes, I yelled back. I found the cable ends. I rethreaded them into the quadrant. I tightened the turnbuckles until the tension sang like a guitar string. I cranked the locking nuts down so hard I stripped the threads on purpose. They would never come loose again without a grinder. I scrambled back out, sweating and bruised. Try the wheel, I shouted. She grabbed the wheel. She turned it. The boat responded, slowly bringing her nose back into the wind. It's working, she gasped, her chest heaving. What happened? Did a cable snap? I climbed into the cockpit. I wiped the grease from my hands on my jeans. I looked at her. The cables were disconnected, I said, manually. The safety wire was cut. Her eyes went wide. What? Someone wanted this boat to fail, I said. Someone wanted you to fail. They rigged it so the vibration of the ocean would back the screws out a few hours into the trip. My uncle, she whispered. He was on board yesterday. Checking the inventory, he said. He spent an hour in the stern checking the emergency equipment. Well, I said, looking at the black wall of the storm approaching. He picked a hell of a time to play politics. He tried to kill us. We're in trouble, aren't we? We have steering, I said. We have sails. We have us, but it's going to get rough. I need you to trust me, Alexis. Completely. No questions, just execution. She looked at me. The fear was there, raw and naked, but the heiress was gone. Only the sailor remained. I trust you, she said. The storm hit at 0200 hours. It was a full gale. 45 knots of wind, gusting to 55. The waves were 15 feet high. Confused, breaking over the bow and washing down the decks like rivers of white foam. The noise was deafening, the wind shrieking in the rigging, the hull slamming against the water. We were double reefed, the jib furled to a scrap of handkerchief. The boat groaned with every impact. I was at the wheel. The rain was stinging my face like needles. Alexis was clipped into the safety jackline, huddled in the companionway, watching the radar. "Squall line approaching," she yelled over the wind. "Red return. It's dense." "Copy," I yelled back. Suddenly, a massive wave broke over the stern. It hit me like a physical blow, knocking the breath out of me. The cockpit filled with water. I gripped the wheel, fighting to keep us from broaching, turning sideways to the wave and rolling over. The water drained slowly through the scuppers. I was soaked, freezing. Micah. Alexis was climbing out. She had a thermos. "Go back," I yelled. "It's not safe. You need coffee," she yelled back. She crawled over the wet teak, clipped her harness to the binnacle. She poured a cup. Her hands were shaking, but she didn't spill a drop. I took it. The heat burned my throat. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. "You okay?" she shouted. "I'm fine," I lied. My arms were burning with fatigue. "How's the nav?" "We're on track," she said. "But the transmission seal." I checked the bilge. "There's oil." "It's leaking again?" "A little. The pressure is pushing past your tape. But the engine is off." "We're sailing." "If we lose the rig," I said, shouting to be heard, "we'll need the engine to keep the bow into the waves. If the transmission fails." "I know," she said. "I'll go down. I'll watch it. I'll add fluid if it gets low." "No," I said. "It's too dangerous down there in this roll. You'll get thrown into the block." "I'm the owner," she said, her voice fierce. "It's my boat. I'm not sitting in the cabin while you do everything. I can pour fluid into a hole, Micah." She looked at me. Her hair was plastered to her face. She looked wild and beautiful and terrified and brave. "Okay," I said, "but clip in. Short tether. If you feel sick, come up immediately." She nodded. She touched my arm, just a brief pressure of her hand on my wet jacket sleeve. "You keep us floating," she said. "I'll keep us moving." She disappeared below. I was alone with the wind. The philosophical drifter in me usually liked this moment. The insignificance of man against nature. But tonight, I didn't feel insignificant. I felt responsible. I had a cargo. A very specific, very important cargo in a white pantsuit, now ruined, who made pasta in a crisis and stared down the ocean. The wind shrieked. The mast vibrated. "Hold together," I whispered to the boat. "Just hold together." We fought the ocean for 12 hours. By dawn, the wind had dropped to 20 knots. The waves were still large, but they were rolling swells now, not breaking crushers. The sky was a bruised gray, but the rain had stopped. I was exhausted. My hands were cramped into claws around the wheel leather. My eyes burned from the salt. Alexis came up. She looked wrecked. Grease on her cheek, dark circles under her eyes. She held up an empty bottle of transmission fluid. "Transmission fluid is topped up," she said. "I used the last bottle. The seal is weeping, but it holds." "Good job," I croaked. "You look terrible," she observed. "Thanks." "Let me take the wheel," she said. "Go sleep." "I can't." "You can," she said firmly. "I'm qualified. I know the course. The danger has passed. If I see a whitecap, I'll wake you. Go." "That's an order, Captain." I looked at her. She wasn't asking. She was commanding. "Okay," I said. I unclipped. I staggered toward the hatch. I stopped and looked back. She stood behind the massive wheel, looking small but rooted. She checked the compass, adjusted the course by 2 degrees. She looked at the sails. She looked like a captain. I went below. I collapsed on the settee in the salon, still in my wet gear. I was asleep before I stopped moving. I woke up to the sound of a calm engine. I sat up, disoriented. Sunlight was streaming through the port lights. The boat was level. The terrible motion had stopped. I ran up to the cockpit. We were in calm water. The coast of Rhode Island was a green strip on the horizon. The Newport Bridge was visible in the distance, spanning the water like a steel rainbow. Alexis was at the wheel, steering us toward the harbor entrance. She looked back at me and smiled. It was a tired, triumphant smile. "Good morning," she said. "We're here." I looked at the water. "You brought us in." "I did," she said. You were snoring. I didn't have the heart to wake you. I navigated the channel. I walked over to her. I checked the gauges. Temperature normal. Oil pressure good. We made the deadline, I said, with 4 hours to spare. She noted. We docked at the shipyard. The lines were thrown. The engines cut. The silence was deafening. It felt unnatural after the roar of the gale. A group of men in suits were waiting on the dock. I recognized the type. Board members, lawyers, sharks in expensive wool. One of them, a man with silver hair and a scowl, the uncle stepped forward. Alexis, he barked. We were told the boat was incapacitated. We were preparing the motion to liquidate. Alexis stepped off the boat. She was still wearing her stained windbreaker and jeans. She was barefoot. She walked up to him. The boat is here, she said, her voice carrying across the quiet marina. She navigated a Force 9 gale. She is operational. The asset is secure, and the valuation can proceed. This is irresponsible, the uncle sputtered. You endangered the company property. Who is this? He pointed at me. Some drifter you picked up? I stepped onto the dock. I stood next to Alexis. I didn't say anything. I just let my presence and my size do the talking. This is Captain Rogers, Alexis said. He is the master of this vessel. He looks like a vagrant, the uncle sneered. He saved this boat, Alexis said coldly. After someone loosened the steering cables and cut the safety wire, the uncle froze. That's a serious accusation. I have the logbook, Alexis said, patting her pocket. And I have the marina security logs. High-definition CCTV from the berth. Keycard entry at 2 a.m. the night before we left. I downloaded them via satellite last night. She stepped closer to him. You were the only one on the boat, Uncle. You cut the wires. You wanted me to fail so you could sell the division. That's attempted manslaughter. And corporate sabotage. She turned to the other board members. The meeting is in 1 hour. I'll be there, and I'll be expecting a resignation. The group dispersed, murmuring. The uncle glared at me, then stormed off. We were alone on the dock. Alexis let out a long breath and slumped slightly. The adrenaline was fading. You were terrifying, I said appreciatively. I was shaking, she admitted. She looked at her hands. Look, I reached out. I didn't grab her. I hesitated, my hand hovering. May I? She nodded. I took her hands in mine. They were cold. My hands were rough, warm, and scarred. I rubbed her knuckles gently. You handled the boat, I said. You handled the leak. You handled him. I couldn't have done it without you, she said. You fixed the cables. You got us through the storm. I just pointed the boat, I said. You provided the reason to keep going. Micah, she said, the job is done. You're free to go. To drift? I looked at the horizon. It was wide and open. Usually, that was what I wanted. Freedom. No attachments. But then I looked at the North Star. I looked at the scratches on the hull, the salt on the windows, and I looked at Alexis. I saw the bruise on her arm where she'd hit the binnacle. I saw the grease under her fingernails. The transmission seal is temporary, I said. It needs a permanent fix. The rigging needs a full inspection after that gale. And the brightwork needs varnishing. Are you applying for a job? She asked, a small smile playing on her lips. I'm offering a strategy, I said. This boat needs a full-time captain. Someone who knows where the bodies are buried or, at least, where the cables are disconnected. And what about the drifting? Anchors are nice, I said quietly. If the harbor is right, she squeezed my hands. The pay is standard. But the boss is demanding. I can handle demanding, I said. I just handled a nor'easter. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the ship's log. Sign it, she said. Captain. I took the pen. I signed my name under the entry for the day. Micah Rogers. Master. I looked at her. The wind blew a strand of hair across her face. I reached up and tucked it behind her ear. It was a small touch. Barely anything. But it felt like locking a course into the autopilot. Are we staying in port? I asked. For a few days, she said. Then, I was thinking the Mediterranean. Long passage, I warned. I know, she said, stepping closer until her forehead rested against my chest. But it's just us on the open water. I like our odds. I wrapped my arms around her, shielding her from the dock, the board members, and the wind. We stood there for a long time, listening to the halyards clanking against the mast, the sound of a ship at rest, but ready to move. The end.